r/askreddit. People no longer bound by their non-disclosure agreements. What can you now disclose?
Funny story. Moments after I was unceremoniously fired because my tech skills were found to be insufficient, the bosses who fired me demanded to know the whereabouts of a hugely important computer file I had worked on. I refused to help them. I even cited the exact language of the NDAO I was compelled to sign. I am prohibited from disclosing details of my employment with anyone, including past and current employees of the company I expounded, adding so ask someone who works here because I don't, he so ask someone who works here because I don't, sir. Till moment that I still cherish 5 years later, but now I think I can disclose the truth. I only hid behind the NDA language because I had no clue where to find their damn computer file, or even where to look. I suck with computers.
The cake/cupcake shop I used to work for claimed everything was homemade, but used Pillsbury cake mix as a base.
I read a thread. I think it was a confessions thread on askreddit, where a woman who ran a super successful home bakery business was literally just using Pillsbury cake mix, and this is how I learned what Pillsbury was, as we don't have it in England. She had the odd hack or two and was seriously good at decorating apparently, but she was essentially just using cake mix. She even talked about how she felt like a fraud, got nauseous about going to the grocery store, and hated the sight or taste of cake.
My daughter also runs her own successful cake baking business as a side venture, and does very well at it. She uses Pillsbury or Betty Crocker exclusively for several reasons. Its cost, boxed cake mixes, are inexpensive. Ease of use. When you have to get 20 cakes hour for a Saturday, and you can't start until Friday night, it's a whole lot easier to open 20 boxes than hand blend all the ingredients. Customer satisfaction. People have a preconceived idea of what cake should taste like, and that's because most people use boxed mixes. It makes them more predisposed to really like what you sold them. Edit. I may have oversimplified my daughter's business. It's not like she's baking a Pillsbury box, slapping some canned icing on it and calling it a day. She's a professionally trained bakery chef, and while the mix may be store-bought, all the extras, fondant, decorations, presentation, etc. is all her. I would share some images, but on the internet with PI, less is better.
I was a contractor for NASA. I still fully support the agency, but I was extremely bugged when I learned that each separate NASA center, AGO, GE, Kennedy, Ames, Goddard, hides many of its inventions and breakthroughs from the other centers, so that when Hiki's ready to assign a big mission and a lot of dollars to one center, they have a better chance to compete over the others. Look what we invented. Ames can't do this over there. Give us the next moon orbiter. The downside is that there is a ton of reinvention and duplicated efforts going on. Sometimes years of work go down the drain when another center does the same thing faster. My perspective was, you all work for NASA. Share knowledge, collaborate. I was frequently ordered to tone down anything revealing when speaking to other centers.
When I was fired from Auntie Anne's in 2010, I signed a 10-year non-compete/onda contract, promising not to detail the baking secrets or work for another pretzel establishment. Well, that ended this year, so now I can run out and start a pretzel store, because the secret I was keeping was making pretzels really requires 2 products, one of them being water, and the other a large bag of pretzel meal/dust/powder. Quite literally, anyone with $2,500 can start a pretzel stand and make perfectly fine pretzels. It's not difficult whatsoever. Edit. I signed the letter when I was hired, but I got a copy with my termination letter.
Well, you forgot to say what the secret browning agent is that all the pretzels get dipped into before they go on the sheet and into the oven. It's baking soda and water. Mystery solved. Also, lemonade 248. Refrigerate.
Baking soda also works in caramelizing onions in a hurry. Just a little. It increases the Maillard reaction substantially.
I think I'm finally ready to let the world know my secret. If you've ever used Verisight, the loading spinners you see when the report loads aren't waiting for anything, people kept complaining that reports were coming back too fast, so it must not be working right. It doesn't take long to complete a few hundred Google searches simultaneously. So the loading spinner just makes you wait a few seconds longer, so it feels like more is happening. So glad to finally get that off my chest. Bonus fact, edit. I also added applying phlebotinum, Betty-Edge, and reticulating splines and looking for Capmemy's random loading messages, but they wouldn't let me do Harrising's random loading messages, but they wouldn't let me do.
I worked at a small bakery in New York City when I was younger. Every morning, the bakery would take their day-old cupcakes and deliver them to a tour company that did sex and the city tours. The tour company would pass our cupcakes off as cupcakes from Magnolia, and significantly much more popular bakery.
I went on that tour with my ex-wife and ate one of those cupcakes. Edit. The cupcake was pretty disappointing. Definitely tasted stale. After the cupcake, the tour took us to some swanky little underground bar where they fed us cosmopolitan martinis, and then it ended at a dildo store. They set us up for a good time.
Is that why she's an ex-wife? Star Wars Battlefront 2A will have microtransactions. The end date was signed in 2016. I was getting more and more worried as the release date kept getting closer, and then it happened. The backlash was so strong that E went down in the history books as most downvoted comment in Reddit's history.
Any more details you can dish out about this? I remember when this all came to a head.
I had to sign an endo to work at this tech company, and I'm still waiting to accidentally overhear something cool so I can feel special for knowing something important, but being legally barred from disclosing it.
Having signed NARs and held security clearances, I can say that the information that was actually protected for me ended up being very boring for normal people, but very important to competitors who are hoping for that slight edge.
I worked at a gym, and in the showers, there was yellow shampoo and blue body wash in pump dispensers. I found out that the only difference between the two soaps was the colour. Memory jog as it was 25. Hand soap was blue, body wash was green, shampoo was yellow. All the same, edit 2. As funny as the replies are, it wasn't an AIM day about soap.
I used to work for a large gas station chain. I worked at its warehouse where it creates a lot of the donuts. The room was really hot, so we were always sweating. There's some machines where the donuts get glazed in chocolate. They're these small machines, they look almost like a BBK grill. They always wanted us to be super fast, glazing the donuts, working in a hot room and working at super fast speeds. It was natural for a lot of people's sweat to just drip in the chocolate underneath us. Never eat the chocolate donuts from a gas station.
Honestly, if the worst thing in those donuts is human sweat, I'm impressed.
Do you want to know how they make the holes in the donuts?
I sued my boss for sexual harassment. I'm guessing I'm still not supposed to tell, but if them won some money, got a better job.
Boss and employee sexual harassment stuff is quite common. I wonder what causes this. Do the bosses power trip into thinking that they can do anything with employees? Yikes! Shame on them.
It was actually for the best. Made me stronger, got a better job, and I got some good money. I was a single mom at the time and paid off all my debt, but at the time, 4 years of hell, and we had to face up in person at the EOC offices. Fuck, I was shaking.
In the IT world, it is often that the piece of internal software or system that gives your company an edge is not quite as huge a deal as it seems. Often, it is not much more than a couple of technologies mashed together to automate things in a way nobody else is doing yet. And those things are fiercely guarded. I had cases where people saw stuff in action and tried to replicate it, but could not because they were missing just one small piece.
I'd rather not risk it, but let's just say hypothetically that a certain tech company who is ehem inside keeps its campuses pretty subpar. I'm talking old, run-down buildings that need dozens of buckets everywhere to catch water every time it rains. They bully companies in the local economy to put up with their horse shot because they know they're too big to hear a no. Hypothetically, I feel like I'm about to get a very angry and legal jargon-filled phone call. Also, I'm leaving horse shot because I think it's funny.
Never had an end day on this, but if I give too much info, I'll get tagged and likely get in serious trouble. Becomes had a severe security breach back in 2007. If you were with them in a certain area of the country and ever called Etham, the number for help on your account, all of your personal info was caught by a third party. Every caller, every piece of data. They never disclosed this breach. Edit. Clarification.
The head shop, smoke shop. I used to work at sold whippets, nitrous cartridges, behind the counter, under the guise of being cake ingredients. All someone had to do was walk in and say they were looking to bake a cake. I'm not sure if they still do it, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I once had to sign an ANDA to get a price on a printer for my sign shop. This was a printer that was only sold by one distributor, by the way, so there wasn't even any direct competition on this particular model. I think their gimmick was that if they make a really big deal out of giving you this super secret pricing, that you'd be lulled into thinking it was really something special. Interesting comment by US/Beard Stoshman below, who probably has the right idea as to what was going on with this practice.
Their machine doesn't do what they want it to, because they designed it and they're not engineers. Also, all investments into their company is investment into a long-term project that they're making out will take way less time than it will. Edit. I'm afraid I never worked for Theranos or Tesla. I actually can't name the company, but it hires 2 people currently.
The book you're reading might only be the bestseller because the author had enough money to buy thousands and thousands and thousands of copies, have them shipped to a warehouse for storage, and eventually destroyed.
My end day is classified military information. Of course, it's almost 25 years now, so I can tell you about the Battle of Norfolk. We're going to shoot the other guys.
I used to work for a construction company in rural Texas, and man, we did so much shady crap. Honestly, my boss was like the Joe Exotic of construction. Always calling us the N-word, cussing us out, threatening to fight us. None of our haul trucks could pass a state inspection because he was too cheap to fix them up. He never paid his taxes on any of the track hose. Anytime the tax man would show up, we would have to drive all the equipment deep into the woods to hide it. He always paid the OSHA inspector off because he knew our shops couldn't pass inspection. We had mountains of scrap metal in the woods, mountains of old oil buckets stacked in the woods. We had an old rail car in the back that was full of oil/hydraulic/transmission fluid. The cap was off, so when it rained, it overflowed and would just drain into the earth. I can't count how many times we would get some equipment in, and he would tell us to dump the fluid into one of the ponds. We always had guys up there trying to sell drugs and crap. Telling you my 3 years there was wild.
The secret ingredient in Jimmy John's tuna salad is Kikkoman soy sauce.
Well, Facebook moderators could disclose the trauma they've experienced moderating one of the biggest social media platforms in the world. They've witnessed horrific things that you would only ever think could happen in a war. One anecdote was of a woman who saw a man stabbed dozens of times, begging for his life. Usually, they don't last long, but the things they see on the job stick with them for years after they quit, and unlike actual Facebook employees, they don't get paid very well or receive much at all in terms of compensation. Cognizant, the company that manages Facebook's moderation, offers them counseling while they work there, but the second they quit, they no longer have access to it and must either deal with the consequences on their own or get the money for a therapist. This shit's fucked up, and the icing on the cake is the NDI, which means that they would take huge personal risk in warning anybody else about the job. New people signing up think they're getting a cushy job, albeit with relatively low pay, then get slammed in the face with things that no one should have to see, much less interact with, as their job.
I used to work in fine dining in Oklahoma City. Cocaine. Cocaine everywhere. I've personally walked in on several NB Menusa players over the years, face down in that white girl. Come to mention it, I've seen several of them effing other guests on the same bathroom counter that their teammates just did a line off of. Personally got to watch Harold Hama sign his divorce check. $975 million is a whole lot of zeros in a small space. Wild times indeed. Edit. For those that may want more stories, I did get to see LeBron covered in toilet paper. Hilarity ensued. Needless to say, she was escorted out.
Hey, their groundbreaking idea was the same one everyone else had 10 years before, and it because so many people seem to think so. No, this had nothing to do with Apple. This was some no-name startup that never went anywhere, obviously, and wanted to contract a contractor no-name startup that never went anywhere for its services. It was all so vague that I don't really remember the details. I mean, I can tell you where we met. I can tell you how hot it was that day. I can tell you what I was wearing, but their big idea, nothing.
I disclosed to a minority partner that the majority partner owed him $100. He could have easily received a check for that amount, but he sued for $700, spent $300 on a lawyer, and got nothing.
The $100 million electronic component broker that I worked for shafted me out of $900. In commissions when I was in my early 20s, they assumed I would not have enough money to fight them in court, and they took their shot. I got a lawyer on contingency, sued them, and took home a $500 settlement in 2000. The 20-year recently expired, and they can continue to kiss my butt until their graves.
The CEO of a non-profit I worked at was making $500,000 a year. Not necessary info bound to my own day, but non-profits can still totally suck with income distribution. Edit, okay? Now first off, I know non-profit doesn't mean no profit, but like some of you said, it bitters your taste to the company when these things happen. It's a tough pill to swallow when starting salary at this company was 40 with a max raise level. After 10 years, like what my boss was at, was 50. Took a year. This was also a government-funded child welfare program. Edit 2. Didn't think I would need this, but here goes. My previous job was starting pay of 27. CEO was making 65. She AO was making 65. She ran the business so well, but had many less employees to manage. There is no broad stroke statement anyone can make that is correct about CEOs and how their pay structure is isn't valid for the work they do. My only point is that it's shitty to be struggling to pay bills while the CEO is getting paid so much more.
Portal 3 was in development at some point. Got a tour of Valve in 2013 and got to see a very early stage of the game. Pretty sure it's not coming out anymore.
The higher-ups in a company I worked for several years ago had a non-verbal agreement among managers to not hire black people. It was in an area with very low African-American population, but the fact that the VP slipped that to me on a night out with coworkers was surprising.
My mum had to sign an A about Ricky Martin being gay.
I'm still bound, but insider trading is real and executive often step downs or a near retire earlier for getting caught.
The company I worked for had shockingly bad maintenance. Everything was broken. We had floods daily because the hose leaked.
Seeing this question so high up, expected it to have better answers. This comment was made when the post only had 7 comments, most of them trolls or stupid answers.
Back when EpiPen selling for $400 was big in the news, I was part of an engineering student team working on a better and cheaper device. It would have 2 doses in 1 pen, since a lot of people are advised to carry 2 pens. You would administer 1 shot and then, if needed, twist the pen and then administer the second. The epinephrine cartridge was replaceable too, so if you didn't use the pen for a year or 2 and it expired, you just got the cheap epinephrine cartridge. Epinephrine is cheap, and replaced it. I ended up leaving the team because no one was contributing to the project except me.
Windows XP Tablet Edition isn't going to be that great. Also, the original announcer voice in Fusion Frenzy was even more annoying than the final version.
I was wrongfully terminated by a past employer. They lowballed the settlement offer and withheld payment on my accrued vacation. This part was actually illegal. It took about a year to get to the point where their attorneys realized that we were not lying about them holding back the accrued vacation, and this caused them to make a more than generous offer to make my claim against them go away.